I am in Adobe Illustrator and I'm going to demonstrate some ways you can practically create different color palettes. And so first we need to go back and understand our tint and shade and also our tone. But how do we create that using the color options in design software? That's exactly what this lesson is going to be about. So we're starting off with this white simple swatch, and we're going to go ahead and highlight it, and you're going to notice you have your color panel and it's going to be all white. So what we want to do is double click on our swatch, double click it, and you're going to get this panel. And what this is called is a hue cube. So we studied before the different hues, and hues are solid colors. They don't have any white or gray or black in them. They're just pure colors. So what happens in the hue cube is in the upper right is a pure hue. So that's going to be pure blue. When we go over to the left, it's going to slowly add a little bit of tint. So you can see how it's adding a little bit of tint, which is white. So we're adding white to the hue to get different variations of the hue. So you can go all the way over here to get pure white, or all the way over to get the pure hue, and somewhere in between to get kind of these lighter tints. So the same thing with shade. Shade's going to be down here. So here's a pure hue. We're going to move our way all the way down. It's going to get darker and darker as we add more shade, which is black. So we're adding more black to this until we get to pure black all the way down to the bottom. And same thing goes for tones. So as we know, tone is a hue, but with gray added instead of black or white. So we're going to go diagonally down, and it's going to slowly add a little bit of gray as we move down the hue cube. All the way down here, it's going to go all the way back to pure black. So we have white, black, pure hue, and all the way down here. So that's basically how this works. This is a very common way to pick colors in Adobe software, but also Affinity Designer and a lot of other different design softwares. You're going to see very similar setups with having to pick your color. So understanding how to kind of pick colors within this hue cube is very important when you're putting together your color palettes, and you'll know how to create a lot of different things. So we're going to do a little bit of an example here. We're going to create a monochromatic color scheme here, color palette. So let's go ahead and pick a pure hue color for this example. So let's double click our swatch. And to get a pure hue, we're going to go to the upper right. Of course, you can do the slider and pick any hue. This is all pure hues since it's in the upper right. We could pick any color we want to go with. So let's kind of go with a blue color. We can always go to color swatches and pick out a perfect CMY yellow, red, green, or cyan here as well. But we're just going to stick to a blue color all the way to the upper right. So this is going to be our pure hue that we're picking out. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to just duplicate this. Let's slide to the left. And we're just going to double click this, and we're going to slowly move and add a little bit of tint, which is white. So we're just going to do that along the way. Slowly moving this down the way, and you can see a nice palette developing. And then we can do one more. And we could do almost pure white, maybe leave a little bit of hue in there. And so right now we have this nice monochromatic, all derived from a single hue, and just added a little bit of tint to it. Now we can go the other way, so we can go ahead and drag this over. And now we're going to do the opposite. We're going to add a little bit of shade, just going down to the bottom right. Once you kind of understand how all this works, you'll be able to pick colors pretty easily. Once you understand, hue, shade, tints, and kind of how adding black and how adding white can really change the aspect of a color, or a hue in this case, all the way down to pretty dark color. Let's go ahead and just aligning those right here. So we have tint over here, we have shade over here, we have the pure hue right here in the middle. It's kind of the basics of how this works. So we're going to do something a little different. We're going to drag this down. So we're taking our pure hue, and we're going to add a little gray to it this time. So we're adding a little bit of tone. So adding a little gray. All the way down. So you can kind of see how this is working. So we have the gray added, we have the white added, we have the black added. You can see how it can develop quite an array of monochromatic colors from these three different aspects. So let's do one more thing. Let's drag it up. And now we're going to do something a little different. So now we're going to go up our hue selection, and we're going to slowly change and shift the hue. So we're going to move this down just a little bit, maybe add a little green. So this is kind of a hue level or hue selection. So now maybe all this makes sense. All this, where do you go? Where do you select the color? So we changed the hue color here, and the tint, and the shade, and then the tone added gray to it. So that's kind of how the basics of how this color hue or hue cube works. When you double click this hue cube, this is default on Adobe Illustrator. You can have it on Adobe Photoshop, you can have it on any design program. You're going to see this kind of hue cube, and now you know why and when to go in what direction, and when to kind of use some of these tabs and everything. So once we get into practical projects, I do a lot of practical project works with color. We're going to be kind of going over this, but now you understand, what direction to go. It can be a little bit confusing at first to go, okay, well now how do I, add shade? How do I add tint? What does that matter? So we're going to take this we're going to go in another step forward, and we're going to be creating some basic color palettes, and we're going to derive it all from one single hue selection.